Hey everybody, this is Kevin Wallace, double CCA and Cisco Press author, and I want to welcome you to your Cisco Cert Success Path. One of the really common questions I get is, Kevin, what would you do if you were starting over today, starting your IT career from scratch? And I gave that a lot of thought, and I created this course to answer that question. I've defined 7 different phases that I would go through, starting with phase 0. I call it 0 because it's not really cert specific. It's more fundamentals, goal setting, how to get a job in IT, how to maybe start your own IT consulting company. We'll get into that in just a bit. But I created these 7 different phases that I would personally go through to advance in my IT career. Now, my career focus has been primarily focused on Cisco products. I realize your mileage may vary and you may need to look at Microsoft or Amazon AWS or some other technology. But this is what I would do if I were starting from scratch. And let's take a brief look in this introductory video at the 7 different phases that I would go through. Phase 0 of your Cisco Cert Success Path is your IT career success blueprint. Now, I call it phase 0 because it's really not certification specific. It's more fundamental. It's getting some basic success principles in place in your life. And this is going to be the focus of our next video. Specifically, we're going to take a look at career goal setting. We'll take a look at some strategies for landing your dream job. How do you prepare a resume? How do you really shine in an IT interview? We'll also take a look at starting your own IT consulting company. And you might say, well, I don't want to start my own consulting company, but think about it. When you're going after your dream job, it really helps to have experience. And one way to get that experience is to have your own IT consulting company on the side that you can start. In fact, you may like that so much that that becomes your full-time gig. But we'll talk about how to get going with your own IT consulting company if you want to do that maybe on the side. Then we'll take a look at some exam preparation strategies. I've developed a 7-step framework for helping you to prepare for any Cisco certification. Next up, we'll take a look at time management. And there's a lot of different time management theories out there today. We'll take a look at what Stephen Covey has to say. We'll take a look at the getting things done method. And I'll tell you exactly what I do to keep myself organized, what I do weekly and daily. And we'll take a look at customizing your certification path. That's coming up in our next video. Then in stage 1, we'll take a look at Network Plus. Now, Network Plus, that's a CompTIA certification, and I didn't really used to recommend this as something that you needed. I mean, it's a nice to have, but do you really need Network Plus? After all, you could get your Cisco Ccna. But here's what's happened. Recently, Cisco Ccna has started to encompass a lot of higher-end topics. For example, in the current Ccna, you have to know about BGP, you have to know about IPSLA, some very advanced stuff. And to make room for those more advanced concepts, over time, Cisco has eliminated some of the more introductory, some of the more fundamental networking curriculum. For example, do you know how to use a crimper and create an RJ45 connector? You know the different IATIA standards that you might use? What about the theory of how fiber optic cabling works? So what's the distance limitation of different types of twisted pair cabling? And it's got to the point where CompTIA has evolved the Network Plus certification so much, I do now think it is a requirement. I think it's something that everybody in the IT field should take. Not saying that the hiring manager is going to be super impressed that, wow, this person has a Network Plus certification, but I think you need to know it because otherwise there might be gaps in your knowledge base. Then, in phase number 2, I recommend that we get our Cisco Ccna routing and switching certification. Now, some people would say, but I don't want to go down the route switch track. I want to go down security or wireless or perhaps data center. But here's the way I look at that. If you think about it, everything routes and switches. I don't care if you're in the wireless world. Well, you're going to be connecting into a switch. If you're in the service provider world, you've got routers in the cloud. Everything routes and switches. So I think everybody needs to get this Cisco Ccna route switch certification. Then in phase 3, I recommend that we take a look at cybersecurity and pick up the Cisco Ccna CyberOps certification. And here's the reason. Even though you may not have cybersecurity as your main career focus, it is becoming incredibly popular. In fact, the forecasts say that within the next 2 years, there are going to be 6 million jobs available in the cybersecurity world. And here's the big thing, 1/4 of them, a whopping 1.5 million of those jobs are going to be empty. Nobody to fill them. So there is going to be a tremendous demand for cybersecurity professionals. So even if you don't want to focus on this primarily, I think we all need to be conversant in cybersecurity. It is going to be such a big deal in the next few years. So I think we should pick up the Ccna CyberOps certification. Next up, and this doesn't really require you to take a certification exam, but I think you need to understand the fundamentals of network programmability. I've been doing networking since about 1989, and this is the biggest paradigm shift I've seen in the industry since that time. People are moving towards SDN, software-defined networking, where instead of configuring routers and switches and other network devices one at a time, we're now able to write code, maybe a Python script, probably take somebody else's Python script and modify it for our purposes. And this Python script, this application, can speak to a network controller, and that network controller can then reach out and configure simultaneously multiple network devices. We don't even have to know the specific commands that need to be issued on those different devices. We might set up a quality of service policy to say, I want to treat voice really good, and I want to treat Netflix really bad, something like that. And we can just send that policy. We can send what Cisco calls our intent. They talk about intent-based networking. We can send our intent down to the controller, and the controller, it knows what appropriate commands to use to send out to those devices. And we'll talk about how to get in the game of network programmability in the Phase 4 video. In Phase 5, we're returning to route switch. Again, everything routes and switches, and I think we need to be able to show future employers or our current employers, or even to deepen our knowledge base, we need to prove that we can go deep into a track. Not just at the NA level, but let's go deep and pick up the CCNP in routing and switching. After all, this is going to be applicable to any track that we choose to go down. And then it gets really fun in Phase 6 because this is where you choose your own adventure. After you've laid this foundation, you've got your career strategies in place. You've filled in the gaps with Network Plus. You got your CCNA and CCNP in routing and switching. You know about cybersecurity. You know about network programmability. Now, this is where you get to say, I want to go down the collaboration track or the data center track or the wireless track or whatever it is. You pick what's most interesting to you. A lot of people come to me and say, Kevin, what track should I go down? What's most popular right now? What's going to make me the most money is what they're asking. And I used to tell them, hey, you're going to be spending a lot of time with whatever you pick, so you better pick something you like. But now I've updated my recommendation to include these prerequisites, but at this point, we've got the prereqs out of the way, and you get to decide what field of technology are you really passionate about. It might not even be Cisco, maybe it's Amazon AWS. Maybe you want to take a look at Juniper, but whatever it is, that's what you're going to do in Stage 6. And this is the high-level overview of your Cisco Cert success path. Now join me in the next video as we take a look at Phase 0, your IT career success blueprint.